Welcome to this very special edition of the Author's Voice with KJ, a show where we explore the stories behind the stories. Here we explore a show where we explore the stories behind the stories. Here we dive into the worlds created by authors, discover their inspirations, and ensure that you walk away enriched and inspired. And today we have with us author Christian Hurst, an American author and creative director whose work blends epic science fiction adventure with emotional depth. He's a lifelong fan of science fiction and is known for the Lily Starling series, which explores identity, connection, and belonging. So today we'll be talking about his book, Lily Starling and the Voyage of the Salamander. So let's dive into the story behind the story. Welcome to the show, Christian.
Thank you. Good to be here. Good to see you again.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show once again, this time on the Author's Voice with KJ Christian. So straightway to to the topic itself. We'll be coming to the book, but first, I always am interested to know the reason behind anyone becoming an author, the inspiration behind one author becoming that author. So I want to understand your inspiration to become an author, and then we'll come to your book.
Sure, absolutely. I've really been sort of a storyteller my whole life. I as far back as I can remember, I was drawing pictures, writing stories, making comic books out of, crayons when I was a kid and that kind of thing. And so, I love to, I think that fiction gives us a world where we can sort of explore who we are, um, and imagine realities other than sort of what we're confined to. Uh, and so the it science fiction especially has always been such a big part of my life because I I use it to imagine, like I said, other worlds, and so I've been creative. I have loved books ever since I was a very little child, and so um, honestly, a lot of these stories I've been developing for decades, even for years, and um, I've worked on independent films. I've worked on, games. I've worked on advertising campaigns. I have a, almost 20-year history in brand marketing and advertising and design and writing. And so I don't know. It just one day I was like, it's time to get these stories out into the world because I, if I can't wait around any longer, uh, or else nobody's ever going to see them. And so I just decided to, start publishing my work. So I've been writing ever since I was a little kid, but it was just time, really.
Absolutely, absolutely, Christian. So, to understand now, let's come to the book. Your book here we have got in the backdrop Lily Starling and the Voyage of the Salamander. Before coming, it's a series, isn't it? How should wonderful, wonderful, two big books on the screen, one on the wonderful. So, it's a series. Help us understand about this book and then the series part itself, where this book fits into the series.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the whole concept of this is really this idea of identity and sense of self and belonging, and the idea of connection, and how, you know, a lot of times I think when we are true to ourselves, it can be kind of a lonely existence because uh, other people may not understand us the way that we truly understand ourselves on the inside. And so the message of this book, especially to young people, and the reason I wrote it for young people, is that if you are true to yourself, that connection will happen. And so in the book, we meet Lily, and at the beginning, as the protagonist who has lost her memory, and so it's it begins as a um, amnesia story where the reader enters the story at the same place as Lily, where you don't know what's going on, she doesn't know what's going on, and so you really keep that perspective with the main character through the whole series. So she's kind of a fish out of water. But as she builds herself and learns more about herself and her place and her found family and her identity in this new future that she finds herself, um, I think that the reader kind of gets to grow along with her. And so that was the starting place for my concept of like how would we see this future where humanity and mankind have sort of uh, thought that we evolved in some way, like we've, in science fiction, we've achieved utopia or whatever it is, we've reached out to the stars. But how would it be if one of us from now just was sort of dropped in there and observed it? How different would it be? Would human beings actually have changed, or just the way that we get around,
Absolutely. So, how much deep into the future you peek into this book of yours, Christian, so that
And
anyone
yeah,
gets an idea about this?
absolutely. It's like in the fictional world, it's about 500 years jump. So she, there is time travel in the first book, and she ends up in this propelled into this future environment on the starship Salamander, and it's she meets this crew of kind of very different. I wouldn't say misfit necessarily. Some of them are kind of misfits, but it's this crew of who was used to working together, and then she's sort of thrown in there and has to find her place among it all. And they have expectations of her, so that was something very important for me to write. Is um, when they meet her, not to spoil anything, but they tell her their idea of who she is and who they expect her to be, and so she comes with them, and then she has to reconcile that because she still doesn't have any memories. So she's trying to decide, do I trust these people? And I feel who I am, but I don't know if it's the same as what these people are telling me. And so that's the adventure, is her discovering herself, but also learning about what other people sort of expect of her.
Right. So, what number book is this in the series?
So this is number one, and right now it's available wherever books are sold, and it's a great kickoff to the series. And it's been doing very well. It's a charting bestseller on Amazon, and so right now there are 3 books released, and I'm working on the 4th book.
Okay. How should we understand 3 book released? Means if it is book number one, what are the other 2 books?
Yep. After the Voyage of the Salamander, then we have Lily Starling and the Storm Riders, which is book 2, and that one really gets into more about coming up against inevitable forces. So there are things in this life that we can't control, like a storm, like a fact of nature. And so, once you have sort of found yourself and you know who you are, you're still going to come up against those things that are out of your control, or at least mostly out of your control. And so that's sort of the theme of book 2. And then book 3 is Lily Starling and the Death Machine. And these are all these pulpy titles that are inspired by classic space opera. But the emotional realism of book 3 is her coming up against the system and systems that sort of try to define you. And so, in the first one, she's just learning who she is. In the second one, she is exploring that, coming up against these big obstacles. And in the third one, she's coming up against the system trying to define her in a very big way.
Absolutely. So, through your book, especially, with the Voyage of the Salamander, what is it that you want to tell to the audience, to the readers? What is the core theme with regards to your writing?
When I start writing a story, I always begin with 2 things. I begin with characters and I begin with theme. And so For me, it was very important for Lily to be this character who very much is someone who acts and who shows up and who isn't somebody who's going to wait to be told what to do. She's very much in that same vein of a lot of heroes that we've seen throughout storytelling. But I thought that making her a young woman might kind of surprise some people with that, where she is the kind of person who comes into a room and makes decisions. Um, and so that's the character I came up with. And then the themes, like I mentioned, around identity. I think it's very important to tell this story of someone who has defined themselves from the inside. I talk a lot about absolutism, which is a theme that's explored by Victor Hugo and Ursula Le Guin, who are two of my favorite authors. Um, and the cost of absolutism, and how many times people put their trust in things because they're told to, rather than that's going from their heart and what they feel on the inside. And so those are the main themes: are identity, finding yourself in an absolute world that's full of binaries, where everybody's telling you what to think and who you are, and then finding connection in that world once you have defined yourself and your path. So,
Absolutely. So you identify yourself more as a humanist. How does
that's
that
right.
reflect in your writing process, in your writing?
Yeah, I think I don't I try to avoid isms and so labels in general, but I do think that that's a good one, because it helps people know, right. It's a little bit of a shorthand for you know um, my philosophy, where when I meet another person, I try to see them as a person first. And of course, we're not perfect, but I just first I try to give them that baseline of humanity, and um, not put on them all the things that I could, that like reasons to hate each other, right? So I think when we meet each other, a lot of times that's what people do. It's like they go down a checklist of things that you could hate about that other person. And so I try to approach it from the opposite, and hopefully have a baseline of humanity first, where at a level on which we can connect as human beings. And then of course, we can totally not like each other, as long as it's based on real issues or differences, but not just arbitrary things that we pick out of the air. And so I think that is my humanism, is all about like recognizing the humanity in other people, and not othering people automatically. And so I try to write my characters with that perspective. I always try to put some humanity in all the characters that I write. Even you're going to meet some villains, and you're going to meet some murderers, but I try to put some perspective in there, not saying that they're good, even though they're a killer or whatever, but just trying to show you that there's a motivation, that there was at least originally a nugget of humanity before they chose to do evil things. And so I just think that it makes things resonate more. In book 3, which has so far been received with really good reviews, um, I've tried to explore some characters that might make people a little uncomfortable. It's like people that you think of as you would just like to write them off because their existence makes you uncomfortable. Their lifestyle makes you uncomfortable, or the way they see the world. But I just really think it's important to understand that we do usually have more in common than we have different, even if it's uncomfortable to recognize that.
Right, right, Christian. So it's been 1 year for this particular book now. So how has been its achievement in terms of what you set out to write, in terms of what you wanted it to achieve? How much has it achieved? How do you like to talk about, or share about the book's success, if I may put it that way?
Absolutely. I am blown away by the reception. Honestly, um, when I first published it, I didn't know where it was going to go. I have all these ideas of things. Like I said, it had reached a point in my life where I wanted to start getting some of these ideas out there. And honestly, I was going to move from publishing this book to a romantic comedy that I still want to write someday, that I've been working on for a long time. And um, but I pivoted back to the Lily Starling series because people really resonated with it, and it started to sell. And I, made the relationship with Outpost Books, and so I'm now on this journey of publishing the entire series. In fact, there's another series on top of this 5-book series that I'm already working on as well. And I'm not saying I'm locked into that world entirely as a writer, but that is where I'm, focusing my attention now. And I'm very grateful for the people who have embraced it as um, and been so open with me about how it has touched their lives and how it's more than just a story. And that's really cool to me because I have put a lot of heart into it. And so seeing that other people kind of get it on the same level has been very satisfying. But it's also uh, been an iterative process. When I first self-published it, it had mistakes in it. It was overwritten. There were a lot of things that just debut stuff, frankly, because I was a first-time author and self-published. Um, and I've been able to refine it. I won a Bronze Reader's Favorite Award last year. And when I read through the comments, from the judges and everything, I was like, I think there's room to improve on this. And I worked with Outpost Books, it's a small publisher out of Pittsburgh, and we got it edited and we refined it, tightened it up, and released the second and then the third edition. Um, and that edition just won triple gold at the Book Fest this in spring. Um, in 3 top categories. It won first place in LGBTQ. It won first place in YA sci-fi, and it won first place in space opera. So that was very validating for me to see that, putting a little more work into it and refining it, leveling it up, actually paid off, and now it's charting in the top 1,000 books on Amazon, which is pretty cool.
Wonderful. Learning as an author, first book, and learning also as a publisher.
Exactly.
How has been that different sort of a journey at the same time? What did you learn, especially in publishing, so that a lot of people can learn about that? Also, as an author, young people who want to go through that same path can learn from you.
I think that I have a 20-year career in creative media, and so that gave me a huge advantage. I'm not going to lie, like being able to just step into this and understand it from a career in advertising and design and communication, and knowing a lot of people in the industry has helped. But so it's allowed me to sort of extend my creative career into books more naturally, I think, than would happen for some people. So I do want to say that I'm incredibly grateful and privileged in that regard. But it is a whole different world too. Like publishing, learning it over the last year has been interesting, and I've met some great people. I've met some other authors. I've met some New York Times best-selling authors. I've talked to some, bigger people in the publishing world, and learned a lot about it, and learned about how it's evolving, because like right now is a very interesting time in the publishing world, and how things are changing with more and more people trying to enter the world of writing, and flash fiction, and sort of genre fiction expanding like crazy. So, there's all these things, different things going on. People are very scared of things like AI, and people cranking out, you know, soulless texts with AI, and it flooding the industry and that kind of thing. But really, I think it's just going to shift and grow and change. I don't think we need to catastrophize about it. I think um, there will be changes, but what I would say to anybody who is serious about publishing their work and their storytelling is that you need to have a perspective. Um, don't just say I've always wanted to. I mean, you can publish anything. Honestly, you can publish your fan fiction. You can publish if you've always just wanted to write a story like Indiana Jones or whatever. Uh, you can publish that. That's fine. But if you are serious about this work and you really want to take it far, I think that it's important to have a perspective and to say, this is really what I'm trying to say. This is what I want people to take home from my work, and then to be consistent about it in your voice and in what you're trying to communicate, and to be serious about leveling it up. I think a lot of times it's hard to take feedback. That's something I've learned over my career, is the ability to take feedback and to grow and to iterate. You know, don't be precious about your work. Don't try to put your head in the sand. I think just pay attention to what people are saying, and but also to be true to yourself and have integrity. So I don't know, it's a balance, but I would really say the best piece of advice is to just keep creating. If you put something out there and it doesn't work, try something else, and be creative, keep inventing, keep putting new things out there, because that's really the way to find the thing that clicks.
Absolutely, absolutely. And coming to the book itself, in a nutshell, what key message, insight you want readers to take away from the book?
I think that just there is always more to explore. There is this, there's a galaxy out there of worlds that we can explore, but that central humanity is always going to be important, no matter how far we reach out into space or into other cultures or into our own lives and the people that we touch and come into contact with every day. I think that embracing that, our humanity, and just trying to be better people, is having growth, I think is just what it's all about, and how you learn and grow and come into contact with more people. And it was important for me to show growth in the journey, and not just have Lily sort of be this, she's brilliant, but I wanted her to be flawed. I wanted to show that she makes mistakes and that she's still growing and that she's young. And in the first book, she learns a lesson from, she meets these engineers, and they're kind of this funny duo, the Rothka, and they teach her this lesson, this parable about this river of your life, and then in a chapter, just a couple chapters later, she's talking to someone who is about to do this evil thing, and she's trying to help convince them to go a different path, and she references this river of our lives. And I just wanted to show that we can learn from others, and we can pass that learning on to spread good in the world, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is one book from that several book series, Lily Starling series. Then another thing you talked about, 5 book publishing and all. I want to understand for the audience is, what's next? What are the things that you are working on? Anything new that you want the world to know about?
Yes, like I said, these ideas have been cooking for a long time, and so um, I have the first. Well, I have basically 10 books outlined, and so book 4 is on pre-order already because I've been writing all 5 of them simultaneously. Um, so I've been able to do kind of a rapid release schedule, which has been nice for my readers because they get excited, and I will sleep someday when all the books are done. But but right now in pre-order is book 4, Lily Starling and the River of Time, and we get back into a little bit of time travel, back into more of an adventure story than book 3 was, which was more of a thriller. So that's what's coming next, and then book 5 will sort of close out the YA series, and you'll just have to wait and see.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's so much to learn from your books, and so much to learn about your books, and so much to learn about you and your writing. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to do that. What's the best way for them to do so?
I think the best way right now, I've been very active on the newsletter for the Lily Starling series, and it's on Substack. So you can find me christianhurst.substack.com. But if you need all my links, go to Instagram. I'm at Hurst Publishing on Instagram, or you can visit churstpublishing.com, which if you also type in lilystarlingbook.com, it will get you there.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the Author's Voice with KAJ. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.